I thought it was just a pair of headphones. I mean, yeah, they weren't mine, but come on, it wasn't like I took a car for a joyride or raided a bank account. It was a quick grab off the kitchen counter, a spur-of-the-moment thing. I was working from home that day, and my earbuds had finally given up the ghost, one side completely dead and the other buzzing like a mosquito in a tin can. I needed to focus, so I saw my sister's expensive over-ear headphones just sitting there, unguarded, practically inviting me to borrow them. I figured I'd use them for a few hours tops, then put them right back. She probably wouldn't even notice. But of course she noticed. When Lana got home from her shift at the hospital, she stormed into the living room like she was ready to put me on trial for crimes against humanity. I was mid-Netflix binge, headphones back on the counter, when she hit me with, "Did you touch my headphones?" There wasn't even a build-up. "No, hi. No, how was your day?" Just straight to DEFCON 1. "Yeah," I said, already annoyed by her tone. "I used them earlier. My earbuds broke." "What's the big deal?" Her eyes widened like I'd just admitted to keying her car. "The big deal is you didn't ask me, Caleb. Those are my headphones, and you know how careful I am with them. What if you broke them?" "I didn't break them," I said, rolling my eyes. "They're fine. Relax." "Oh, you don't get to tell me to relax," she snapped, crossing her arms. "You don't even know how much those cost, do you? Or how long I saved up for them. You think it's okay to just take my stuff whenever you want? God, Lana, they're just headphones. I borrowed them for a few hours. You're acting like I stole your kidney or something." And that's when it all went nuclear. She started pacing, throwing her hands up, muttering about respect and boundaries and how she couldn't believe I was this selfish at my age. I fired back, calling her dramatic and reminding her that we live in the same house, so what's hers is kind of mine too, right? Okay, I knew that one would piss her off, but I couldn't help myself. She glared at me like I'd sprouted a second head and said, "You don't get to decide what's yours to take, Caleb. You're 28, not 12. By this point, I was over it. I stood up, grabbed my broken earbuds from the coffee table, and waved them in her face. This is why I borrowed your precious headphones. Maybe if you weren't hoarding the only decent pair in the house like some kind of dragon, I wouldn't have had to." Her face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. "Hoarding? Hoarding? They're mine. I bought them. You want decent headphones? Buy your own." "Maybe I will," I shouted back. "But until then, maybe you could try not being a total psycho about someone borrowing something for a few hours." "Jesus, Lana. It's not like I licked them." "Oh, real mature," she shot back. "You don't get it, do you? It's not about the headphones. It's about you not respecting my stuff, my space, me. This isn't the first time you've done this, Caleb. You think just because we're siblings, you can do whatever you want. That's because you overreact to everything," I said, throwing my arms up. "God forbid someone touches something of yours without signing a rental agreement first. You're so uptight, Lana. It's exhausting." Her jaw clenched, and I could tell I'd gone too far. But instead of yelling, she did something worse. She went completely silent. For a second, I thought she was going to cry, but instead, she just turned and walked out of the room. I figured that was the end of it. She'd cool off. I'd cool off, and we'd laugh about it later. Except she didn't cool off. The next morning, I woke up to find my laptop missing from the kitchen table where I'd left it. After tearing the house apart, I finally found it shoved in a corner of the laundry room, covered in a pile of dirty clothes. When I confronted her about it, she just shrugged and said, "Oh, I borrowed it. Hope that's okay." I could feel my blood pressure spike. "That's not the same thing, Lana. You didn't even use it. You just hit it like a child." "Oh, so now it's different?" she asked, smirking. "Funny how that works. Maybe you should try respecting other people's things if you don't like it when they mess with yours." "That's not respect. That's just being petty," I snapped. "You're literally proving my point right now." "No, Caleb," she said, leaning against the doorway with her arms crossed. "I'm showing you how it feels. But clearly, you're too self-absorbed to get it." We went back and forth for another hour, both of us doubling down, neither of us willing to admit we might have been wrong. She accused me of being entitled. I accused her of being a control freak. She brought up every little thing I'd borrowed or ruined over the years. Her hairdryer, her nail clippers, a stupid mug she claimed I scratched. I pointed out how she always had to have the final say in every argument, how she couldn't let the smallest thing go without turning it into World War III. By the end of it, we weren't even talking about the headphones anymore. It was like we were dredging up every grudge we'd ever held against each other, and it just kept spiraling. Now we're barely speaking. She still glares at me every time we're in the same room, and I've started avoiding her altogether. I know I could apologize to make peace, but I don't think I'm the one who should. She blew this whole thing out of proportion, turned a minor inconvenience into a personal attack. But then again, maybe I did cross a line by taking her stuff without asking. I don't know anymore. All I know is we're both pissed off, and neither of us is budging. So, Reddit? AITA? Last weekend was my sister's wedding, and I didn't go. I know how that sounds, but hear me out. She wanted this massive, over-the-top affair. Think royalty meets Pinterest overload, complete with a horse-drawn carriage and a string quartet flown in from who knows where. Every detail was carefully orchestrated, except, apparently, her guest list. She wanted me to wear some powder blue monstrosity of a bridesmaid dress and spend the whole day running errands like I was her unpaid assistant. When I told her I wasn't interested, she had the nerve to act shocked, like my life was supposed to revolve around her wedding. Let me back up. A few months ago, she called me, practically vibrating with excitement. "I want you to be a bridesmaid," she said, like it was some kind of honor. I laughed. Me? Seriously? I'm not the bridesmaid type. I'm not the wedding type. I don't believe in the whole pomp and circumstance charade. I told her weddings are basically just overpriced performances for social media. I was polite about it, at least I thought I was, but I made it clear I wasn't interested. She said something about family and how this was important to her, and I said, "Yeah, well, my time is important to me." Cue the silent treatment for 2 weeks. Eventually, she reached out again, not to apologize, but to guilt-trip me. "Mom's really upset that you won't be part of this," she said. You know, she's been looking forward to seeing her daughters together in the wedding photos. Classic emotional manipulation. But I stuck to my guns. I told her I'd think about attending as a guest, but that was as far as I'd go. Fast forward to last month. My sister started sending me texts almost daily, trying to rope me into wedding prep. "Can you come dress shopping with me? We need someone to pick up the programs from the printer. Are you free to help set up the venue the night before?" No, and no. I had my own life to deal with: work, hobbies, plans with friends. Why should I drop everything for her overblown fantasy? Then, a few days before the wedding, she called me, practically in tears. Apparently, one of the bridesmaids dropped out, and she wanted me to fill in last minute. "You don't even have to do much," she pleaded. "Just stand there and hold a bouquet. It's one day." I asked her why this was such a big deal to her when she had a dozen other people already involved. She said it wasn't about the logistics. It was about me being there for her. I told her I'd already made plans for that weekend, a trip to the coast with some friends. She asked me if I was serious, and I said, dead serious. The day of the wedding, I didn't even think about it. My friends and I rented a little house by the beach, drank wine on the deck, and spent the afternoon laughing at the ridiculous messages she and my mom were sending me. "Can't believe you do this to your family," said one. "You're going to regret this someday," said another. My favorite was from my mom. "This is breaking my heart." Dramatic much? I rolled my eyes and turned my phone off. When I got back home, the fallout was substantial. My sister isn't speaking to me. My mom left me a 5-minute voicemail full of disappointed sighs and passive-aggressive comments about family values. Even my dad, who usually stays out of this kind of drama, told me I'd crossed a line. I reminded him that I'm an adult and can make my own choices. He said, "Sure, but that doesn't mean your choices don't have consequences." Whatever. Look, I get that people are upset, but it's not like I didn't warn them. I told my sister months ago that I wasn't interested, and she kept pushing. If she'd just respected my boundaries, none of this would have happened. I don't see why I should have to put my life on hold for a day I don't even believe in, just to make everyone else happy. I know they think I'm selfish, but isn't it selfish of them to expect me to prioritize their happiness over my own? Now I'm stuck in this weird limbo where half my family thinks I'm a monster and the other half is pretending nothing happened. Honestly, I feel fine about my decision. It was a great weekend, and I don't regret it for a second. But I keep thinking about the way my mom's voice cracked on that voicemail, or the look on my dad's face when he said I let them down. I don't think I'm wrong. You know how people always say, stay out of other people's business? Yeah, I never understood that. If someone you care about is clearly going off the rails or making bad choices, isn't it your duty to step in? That's how I felt about my coworker Erin. She's the sweetest person, always bringing in homemade muffins, checking in on everyone's kids, and just generally radiating positivity. But sweet doesn't equal smart. And when it came to her personal life, Erin was as clueless as a toddler with a power drill. It all started about 6 months ago when Erin began dating this guy, Brad. He was the classic walking red flag. Unemployed by choice, constantly borrowing money, and suspiciously vague about where he spent his nights. Erin, being Erin, saw him as some misunderstood genius. She'd gush in the break room about how he was working on himself and finding his passion. But come on, who finds their passion playing Xbox at 3 a.m. while their girlfriend pays their rent? I couldn't stand to see her wasting her time and energy on this parasite. Somebody had to save her. So I decided that somebody would be me. At first, I tried to drop subtle hints. You know, Erin, I'd say casually, you deserve someone who brings as much to the table as you do. But Erin would just smile that sunny smile and say, oh, Brad's trying. He just needs a little time. Time? He'd already sucked up 6 months of her life. I wasn't about to sit back and watch him drain another second. That's when I started to put together a plan. The breakthrough came during a random office lunch when Erin mentioned that Brad had been borrowing money from her again, this time to pay for some mysterious car repairs. Everyone at the table rolled their eyes, but Erin just shrugged and said, he promised to pay me back. That was it. I decided that Erin wasn't going to save herself, so I'd have to do it for her. I reached out to Erin's best friend, Amanda, who I'd met at a couple of office happy hours. Amanda was just as fed up with Brad as I was. Honestly, she said during our whispered phone call, I've been wanting to stage an intervention for weeks. Intervention. The word lit up my brain like a Christmas tree. This wasn't just meddling. This was a mission of mercy. Erin might hate us in the short term, but she'd thank us later. Amanda and I planned everything down to the minute. A surprise girls' night at Erin's apartment, followed by a carefully worded confrontation. It was foolproof. The night of the intervention, Amanda and I showed up with wine, takeout, and what I can only describe as the world's most passive-aggressive PowerPoint. We kicked things off with small talk and laughs to keep Erin relaxed. But after a couple of glasses of Cabernet, Amanda gave me the signal. I took a deep breath, looked Erin straight in the eye, and said, we need to talk about Brad. Her face fell immediately. What about him? She asked, her voice sharp. Erin, we love you, Amanda said, reaching for her hand. And because we love you, we can't stay silent anymore. Brad is bad for you. What? Erin laughed, but it sounded forced. You guys don't even know him. We know enough. I cut in. We know he's been living off your money. We know he's not supporting you emotionally or financially. And we know you deserve better. Erin put down her wine glass, her cheeks bright red. Wow, I can't believe this. We're not trying to attack you, Amanda added quickly. We're just worried. I don't need you to worry about me, Erin snapped. And I definitely don't need you ambushing me in my own apartment. I decided to go for the jugular. Erin, you're too nice to see it, but Brad is using you. He doesn't love you. He loves what you can give him. Erin stared at me, her eyes wide and shiny. For a second, I thought she was going to cry, but then she laughed. An angry, bitter laugh I'd never heard from her before. You think you're helping me? This isn't help. This is control. You don't get to decide what's best for me. I'm not trying to control you. I protested. I'm trying to protect you. From what? She shot back. From making my own choices? From making mistakes and learning from them? That's not protection, it's arrogance. I was stunned. I'd expected gratitude, maybe a few tears of relief. Instead, Erin was tearing into me like I was the bad guy. Amanda tried to calm things down, but Erin was on a roll now. She accused us of overstepping, of acting like we were better than her, of using concern as an excuse to meddle. It was like she'd been bottling up every frustration she'd ever had with us and was finally letting it all out. By the time she kicked us out, Amanda and I were both in shock. We stood in the hallway of Erin's building, clutching our untouched takeout bags, too stunned to speak. Finally, Amanda muttered, "Well, that went south." "No kidding," I replied, still trying to process what had just happened. Erin hadn't even let us show her the PowerPoint. The next day at work, Erin was polite but icy. She stopped joining us for lunch and started declining invitations to happy hours. I thought she just needed time to cool off, but weeks turned into months, and things never went back to normal. Amanda and I were officially on the outs, and as far as I know, Erin's still with Brad. I don't regret trying to help her. Someone had to, but I can't stop wondering if I crossed a line. Was I really trying to protect Erin, or was I just trying to control her? I thought I was doing the right thing, but now I'm not so sure. It all started with a phone call from my sister, Emily. "I need you," she said, her voice trembling in a way I hadn't heard in years. I could hear the chaos in the background, her kids screaming, the faint crash of something fragile hitting the floor. "It's just for a week. Please, Alex." I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. I already knew where this was heading. She'd been struggling ever since her divorce last year, and I'd stepped in more times than I could count. Babysitting, late-night pep talks, loaning her money I never expected to get back. I'd become her safety net, and while I didn't mind helping when I could, this time felt different. I started carefully. I have the conference next week. It's my first big presentation since the promotion. I can't just drop everything. There was a long pause. I could almost hear her biting her lip through the phone. "You can work on your presentation here. The kids will be asleep at night, and during the day, they'll be at school." It's not that simple. I've been preparing for weeks. I'm already juggling so much with Ellie's dance recital and Liam's science fair. Taking on your kids for a week. My voice trailed off as I tried to word it gently. "It's just too much." Her tone shifted immediately. "Right, because your life is so perfect. You've got it all together. Your perfect husband, your perfect job, your perfect little house. Meanwhile, I'm drowning here, Alex. And you can't even be bothered to help." That stung, and she knew it. My life wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. Just last week, Ellie came home crying because a girl at school called her weird for still liking dinosaurs. Liam's been struggling with math, and Ryan and I have been passing like ships in the night, barely finding time to talk. But Emily didn't see any of that. She only saw what she wanted to see. "I'm not saying I don't want to help," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm saying I can't help in the way you're asking. I can come over this weekend and help you get organized, set up a meal plan, maybe arrange for a sitter. But I can't take on your kids right now." Her laugh was cold. "A meal plan? Seriously? You think I need a meal plan, Alex? God, you're so out of touch." I sighed, glancing at the clock. My break was almost over, and I still hadn't eaten lunch. "I'm trying, but I have responsibilities too. If I mess up this presentation, it could set me back years. And Ryan's already stretched thin with the kids. I can't ask him to take on more." "Of course, it's about Ryan," she snapped. "It's always about him. You've changed, you know that. You used to care about family. Now it's all about your career and your perfect little bubble." Her words hit like a slap, but I held my ground. "That's not fair. I've been there for you, Emily. Every time you needed me. But I have to draw the line somewhere." "Fine," she said, her voice icy. "Draw your line. But don't expect me to forget this. When Mom needed help, I was there. When you were struggling in college, I was there. But now that I need you, you're too busy." "Got it." I opened my mouth to respond, but the line went dead. I stared at my phone, the weight of her words settling over me like a heavy blanket. She wasn't wrong. I had leaned on her during college. But back then, she didn't have 2 kids and a mountain of debt. And I wasn't juggling a demanding job and a family of my own. That evening, I told Ryan what had happened. He listened quietly, his brow furrowed in that way it always did when he was thinking deeply. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "You've done more for her than anyone else. But you can't set yourself on fire to keep her warm." I nodded, but it didn't ease the guilt. I hated letting her down. I hated that she saw me as unsupportive when all I wanted was to protect the life I'd worked so hard to build. The next morning, I texted her, offering to pay for a babysitter for the week. She replied with a single word, "Don't." Days passed, and the tension gnawed at me. I considered skipping the conference, but Ryan wouldn't hear of it. "You've worked too hard for this," he said firmly. So I went, delivered my presentation, and even received praise from the CEO. But the victory felt hollow. Emily hadn't spoken to me since our fight, and every time I picked up my phone, I hesitated, unsure if I should call or let her cool off. A week later, Mom called. Emily told me what happened. She said, her tone neutral but laced with concern. She's upset, Alex. She feels abandoned. I didn't abandon her, Mom. I just couldn't do what she wanted. I've been helping her for months. Why can't she see that? I know, honey, Mom said gently. But she's in a tough spot. She doesn't think clearly when she's stressed. Maybe just give her some time. Time. That's what everyone kept saying. But how much time would it take for her to understand that I wasn't trying to hurt her? That saying no didn't mean I didn't care? I replayed our conversation over and over, wondering if I could have handled it differently. Should I have just said yes and figured it out later? Or would that have set a precedent I couldn't maintain? I'm still torn. I want to be there for her, but I can't sacrifice my own stability to do it. I've tried reaching out again, but she shut me out completely. So here I am, asking the internet, AITA? I was running on autopilot that morning, halfway through my coffee and entirely in commute survival mode. Merging into the middle lane was my priority as I sped past the slow-moving cars hugging the right shoulder. It was like clockwork. Predict the flow of traffic, anticipate jerks who can't use turn signals, and glide my way to my exit without a hitch. But the moment I hit the blinker to claim my spot, the driver beside me gunned it. My pulse ticked up a notch, irritation blooming instantly. It wasn't just the speed. It was the boldness of cutting me off when I clearly signaled. Instinctively, I turned my head to give the driver a glance, the one that says, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And then, my brain hiccuped. The offender was my wife, grinning like she just pulled off the most adorable prank. Her hand was raised in an exaggerated wave, fingers flailing with the enthusiasm of someone who hadn't been awake for an hour yet. For a split second, I was struck dumb, blinking between her wide smile and the road ahead. The light turned green in my head, annoyance. It wasn't a conscious decision, but I didn't wave back. Instead, I grimaced and shifted gears mentally, hyper-focused on not missing my exit. I rationalized. This was dangerous. People die in stupid freeway accidents caused by distractions like this. My wife should know better. So, I kept my hands at 10 and 2 and let her little display of affection slide off like raindrops on a windshield. When I got to work, my phone pinged. Said you didn't wave back. Sad face. The message was short, innocuous enough that I convinced myself she was joking. I gave a half smile to the screen before slipping my phone back into my pocket. There were emails to read, deadlines to stress over. Idea explain latte. But later became dinner. And dinner became the calm before bed moment where we were folding laundry, and she finally brought it up. Her words came like a lilt, tentative yet probing. "You really didn't like seeing me this morning, huh?" "It's not that." I started a pair of socks in one hand. "It's just, I was trying not to crash, you know?" Her eyebrows furrowed, and I recognized the hint of wounded pride lurking beneath her frustration. I wasn't asking for a love letter, just a smile, maybe a wave, something. I sighed, tugging at a stubborn wrinkle in my shirt. "Babe, I was distracted. The freeway's not the place for that. It wasn't personal." She crossed her arms, her jaw setting in that way that usually meant I'd really stepped in it. "It felt personal. I wanted to do something cute, and you looked at me like I was a stranger you couldn't be bothered with." "That's not fair," I countered, feeling a twinge of guilt that I couldn't quite squelch. "You sped up and blocked me from merging. I could have missed my exit or worse." "I didn't mean to block you." Her voice rose slightly, tinged with defensiveness. "I was just excited to see you. I thought it'd be fun." My head shook instinctively. Fun on a freeway doesn't exist. It's stress and chaos. I wasn't in the right headspace to reciprocate. She fell silent, tossing a pile of unfolded clothes onto the couch before sitting down heavily. I could see the gears in her mind turning, as if weighing whether or not to say what was really bothering her. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, stripped of its earlier edge. "You know, sometimes I feel like you forget to be my friend. Not just my husband, but my friend. You're so good at being serious and logical. But there are moments I need you to just be silly with me, even if it's a stupid wave on the freeway." Her words hit like a slow ache building in my chest. I wasn't wrong about prioritizing safety, but she wasn't wrong either. In her mind, I hadn't dismissed a wave. I dismissed her. I leaned against the armrest, searching for the right words. You're right. I wasn't thinking about it from your side. I didn't mean to make you feel invisible. She smiled faintly, her defenses softening. That's all I wanted to hear. Maybe next time, just wave. I grinned sheepishly, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. Fine, but no sudden speed-ups next time, all right? Her laugh was small but genuine. Deal. And maybe text me after you make it to work? Deal. I echoed. As I finished folding the last pair of socks, I thought about her earlier comment. Not just her husband, but her friend. I promised myself to remember that, even during rush hour. I spent weeks planning my birthday party. I'm not usually one to make a big deal out of birthdays, but this year felt different. I turned 30, big milestone, right? It wasn't just about the age. I had a rough couple of years, working through a breakup, moving into my own place, and rebuilding myself from scratch. This party wasn't just a celebration. It was a declaration. I was back. So, I booked a private room at this trendy wine bar, sent out invitations with personalized notes, and even splurged on a caterer for finger foods that matched the theme. I wanted everything to feel intentional, meaningful. My friends would show up, raise a glass, and celebrate me. For once, just me. The day of, I was vibrating with excitement. The room looked perfect, soft fairy lights, cozy seating, a custom playlist humming in the background. My closest friends trickled in, complimenting the setup and handing me heartfelt cards. I felt seen and loved. Then there was Emily. Emily and I had been best friends since college. She was loud, charming, and had this knack for turning every room she entered into her personal stage. I always forgave her for it because, well, she was Emily. But tonight wasn't about her. She arrived fashionably late, as usual, in this sparkly dress that turned heads the second she walked in. Not that I minded. Emily had a way of making her entrances feel like a moment, and honestly, I was glad she came. She hugged me, handed me a gift bag that clinked like bottles, and whispered, "This is your night, babe." For a brief second, I believed her. Everything was perfect for about an hour. People mingled, laughed, and toasted to me. My college friends and work friends were blending better than I expected, and I felt this surge of pride. I had curated this group, this evening. Then, Emily cleared her throat. Loudly, everyone turned, as they always do with Emily, and she raised her glass. Okay, everyone, I have an announcement," she said, practically bouncing on her heels. I froze. What announcement? I smiled, trying to play it cool, but my stomach sank. Emily didn't wait for me to speak or even acknowledge her. She just dove in. As some of you know, David and I have been talking about taking the next big step. Well, she stretched the suspense for maximum effect, like she was on a reality show. Last night he proposed. I'm engaged. The room exploded. Cheers, applause, hugs. People rushed to her, asking to see the ring. Even I clapped, though my hands felt mechanical, detached from my body. My night disappeared before my eyes. My birthday was now Emily's engagement celebration. She had stolen it. And the worst part was she wasn't even trying to be malicious. She just didn't think. She never thought. The rest of the evening was a blur of Emily's radiant smile, people taking pictures of her hand, and a slow, smoldering anger building in my chest. I tried to redirect the conversation a few times. Oh, hey, did anyone try the charcuterie? Or remember, we're here for my birthday. But my attempts fell flat. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. By the time we got to the cake, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, holding my wine glass, and called for attention. It took a minute to peel people away from Emily's glow, but eventually, the room settled. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming tonight. I began, keeping my tone steady even though my chest felt like it might burst. It's really special to have you all here to celebrate my 30th. I glanced at Emily. I know there's been a lot of excitement tonight, but I hope we can remember why we're here in the first place. The room went silent. People exchanged glances. Emily tilted her head, looking genuinely confused. Of course, it's your birthday, babe, she said, laughing nervously. We're all here for you. Are we? I couldn't stop myself. The words came out sharper than I intended. Because it kind of feels like we're here for your engagement announcement. The air grew thick. Emily's face fell, her smile slipping into something harder. What are you saying? she asked, her voice lower now, defensive. I sighed, trying to rein it in, but failing miserably. I'm saying it's a little odd to hijack someone's birthday party to announce your engagement, especially when you could have done that literally any other day. The room collectively inhaled, the kind of sharp breath that signaled I had crossed a line. Emily's cheeks flushed, but not from embarrassment. She was angry now. Hijack, she repeated, her voice rising. I wasn't hijacking anything. I just wanted to share my good news with my friends. I didn't realize that was a crime. Your good news could have waited. I shot back. This was supposed to be about me for once, Emily. For once. Oh, for once? She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You're acting like I make everything about me all the time, which is so unfair. I didn't plan this, okay? It just happened. It always just happens with you. I snapped. You always need to be the center of attention, and you don't even see it. Do you even realize how exhausting it is being your friend sometimes? Her jaw dropped. The room was dead silent. Someone shuffled uncomfortably near the back, but no one dared intervene. Emily looked like I had slapped her. Wow, she said finally, her voice trembling. I had no idea you felt this way. If I'm such a terrible friend, maybe I shouldn't have come at all. Maybe you shouldn't have, I said before I could stop myself. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The party limped on after that, but the mood was ruined. People whispered in corners, their eyes darting between me and the door. I forced a smile, pretending everything was fine, but inside I felt like I'd detonated a bomb and was standing in the rubble. The next day my phone lit up with texts. Some people said they understood where I was coming from, but thought I'd been too harsh. Others said I was right to stand up for myself. Emily hasn't texted me, and honestly, I don't know if she will. I keep replaying the moment in my head, wondering if I could have handled it differently, or if this was inevitable after years of holding my tongue. I've always prided myself on being the reliable one. You know, the friend or family member people could count on no matter what. The one who'd drop everything to help you move, listen to your breakup drama at 2 a.m., or lend you cash if you were short. That's who I thought I was, until this year, when I realized I'd crossed some invisible line from dependable to doormat. It started with my sister, Emily. She's a single mom, and I get it, life's hard for her. Her ex disappeared years ago, leaving her to raise my niece, Lily, by herself. I admire her strength truly, but somewhere along the way, I became her default crutch. At first, it was small things, picking up Lily from school because Emily got stuck at work, watching her overnight when Emily was sick, or chipping in for birthday presents when money was tight. I didn't mind. That's what family does, right? But as time went on, her requests escalated. She'd text me in the middle of meetings to pick up groceries or call me at midnight because Lily had a science project due and she'd forgotten to buy supplies. I'd rearrange my plans, use my lunch breaks, stay late at the office to make up lost time, all to keep her afloat. It wasn't just the logistics either. Emily would vent to me for hours about her job, her coworkers, or how unfair life was. Every time I tried to suggest solutions, she'd brush them off. You just don't get it, she'd say. You're not a single mom. I felt sorry for her, so I kept giving. My weekends disappeared into babysitting and errands. My savings dwindled from loans she never repaid. I told myself it was temporary, that she needed me. But a few months ago, everything came to a head. It was a Friday evening, and I just finished a brutal week at work. All I wanted was to order takeout, binge watch a dumb show, and not talk to anyone. I was literally halfway through paying for my sushi delivery when Emily called. I almost didn't answer, but guilt won out. She sounded frantic. Lily has a recital tomorrow, and I forgot to pick up her costume. The shop closes in an hour. Can you go grab it for me? I hesitated, but I heard Lily crying in the background. Fine, I said, slipping on my shoes. The shop was across town, and traffic was awful. I barely made it before closing. When I handed over my card to pay, the cashier told me the total, $72. I texted Emily to ask if she could Venmo me. I'll pay you back soon, promise, she replied. Spoiler alert, she didn't. The next morning, I was running on fumes when she called again. Can you drop the costume off? I'm swamped, and the recital starts in an hour. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, Emily, you're going to have to figure this out. I can't keep doing this for you. She paused, then laughed like I was joking. When she realized I wasn't, her tone turned sharp. Are you serious? Lily needs this. Don't be selfish. It's not like you have kids or a real responsibility. That hit me like a slap. For years, I'd sacrificed my time, energy, and money to help her. And now I was selfish? I felt a spark of anger, something I wasn't used to with her. Emily, I said, my voice shaking, I've done so much for you because I care, but I can't keep dropping everything. You need to plan better. This isn't fair to me. She exploded, called me heartless, said I didn't understand how hard her life was, accused me of abandoning Lily. I stood firm, though it killed me to hear the hurt in her voice. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm setting a boundary. I'll always love you and Lily, but I can't keep being your backup plan. She hung up on me. I spent the rest of the day feeling like the worst person on earth. Later, my mom called. Emily told me what happened, she said, her voice dripping with disappointment. She's really upset. Couldn't you have just helped her this once? That this once broke me. I started listing every once over the past few years. The unpaid loans, the sleepless nights, the missed opportunities. Mom listened quietly, then said, she's family, sweetheart. Family helps each other. I snapped. Does family mean I have to burn myself out while she takes advantage? When is enough enough? Mom didn't have an answer, just an awkward pause before mumbling that she had to go. It's been weeks, and Emily and I still haven't spoken. I miss her. I miss Lily. But I also don't miss the constant weight of being their lifeline. For the first time in years, I have free weekends. I'm sleeping better. I even signed up for a pottery class. A silly little dream I'd put off because I was too busy running errands for someone else. Still, the guilt eats at me. Maybe I could have handled it differently. Maybe I should have done one more favor. But a part of me knows that if I hadn't said no, I'd still be drowning. So, Reddit, AITA? When my daughter first started dating Alex, I didn't think much of it. Young love, I figured. They watch movies in the basement or head out for ice cream, typical teenage stuff. But soon enough, he was in our lives a lot more, and things started to feel off. Like the time we ordered pizza for everyone, specifically getting extra because my daughter insisted Alex would be eating with us. As soon as I walked in the door with the food, Alex stood up, muttered something that barely qualified as a goodbye, and bolted out the front door. No explanation, no thanks, nothing. I chalked it up to teenage weirdness, but my husband raised an eyebrow and said, "That's strange, even for a teenager." Then there was my daughter's birthday dinner. We invited Alex along to celebrate. Her first boyfriend, a big deal, right? We went to a nice restaurant, ordered a ton of food, and Alex joined in by ordering a dish. But instead of eating it, he spent most of the evening in the bathroom. When he wasn't gone, he was sitting there, staring at the table, contributing absolutely nothing to the conversation. My daughter was clearly trying to cover for him, laughing too loudly at her own jokes and trying to deflect any questions directed at him. His untouched plate sat there like a silent accusation. The final straw came a few weeks later. We'd spent the afternoon at the park, and everyone was starving by the time we headed home. I suggested we stop at a diner on the way, my treat. Alex looked like he was going to argue, but then shrugged and came inside with us. At the table, I encouraged everyone to order whatever they wanted. My daughter and I got burgers. My husband ordered a steak, and Alex? Nothing. He just sat there awkwardly, looking at his phone occasionally, but mostly staring at the table while we ate. I felt his eyes on me every time I took a bite. It was unnerving. I don't like people watching me eat, who does? And here he was, not eating, not talking, just present. It felt invasive in a way I couldn't quite articulate. When we got home, I told my daughter how I felt. "Sweetheart," I said, "Alex is, well, he's kind of rude." I tried to be diplomatic, but she immediately jumped to his defense. "He's not rude, Mom. He just has a hard time eating in front of people." That was news to me. Apparently, Alex has some kind of phobia, deepnophobia, she called it, that makes eating in social settings a nightmare for him. My first reaction was sympathy, but then I thought about how uncomfortable his presence made me during meals. I told her, as gently as I could, that maybe it would be better if Alex didn't join us during meal times if he wasn't going to participate. I wasn't trying to be cruel, just practical. Why put everyone, including Alex, in an awkward situation that did not go over well. My daughter accused me of being discriminatory. If he had a visible disability, would you tell him he couldn't come over? She demanded. I tried to explain that this wasn't about his phobia, but about how his behavior, walking out without a word, sitting silently and staring, ordering food and not eating it, affected everyone else. She wasn't having it. She stormed off, slamming her door for good measure. My husband, ever the diplomat, suggested we sit down and talk things out as a family. But honestly, I'm not sure what there is to discuss. Am I being unreasonable? I don't think so. Everyone has the right to feel comfortable in their own home, and mealtime should be a time for connection and enjoyment, not a source of stress. Still, I can't help but wonder if I handled things poorly. Should I have tried harder to understand Alex's perspective? Or am I justified in setting boundaries for the sake of my own comfort? I walked through the front door that evening with the weight of the day pulling me down, craving nothing more than a quick shower and dinner with my family. The hum of voices from the living room was familiar, yet there was a subtle edge in the air, something unspoken, sharp like the silence before a storm. As usual, I greeted everyone with a smile, including my in-laws, who were perched on the couch like statues from a bygone era, judging every modern thing within their gaze. They returned the gesture with a stiffness that felt almost ritualistic, an acknowledgement more for formality than sincerity. My husband, however, avoided my eyes entirely. Oh, I chalked it up to one of those days and headed upstairs to rinse off the day. The warm water was a momentary sanctuary, but when I returned downstairs, towel dried and ready to tackle the evening, I was greeted by the glaring absence of dinner preparations. My stomach, already grumbling, turned into a knot of disbelief. A quick scan of the kitchen confirmed it. Nothing had been started. Not a single pot on the stove, no chopping board in sight. I looked over at my husband, still avoiding eye contact, his demeanor a mix of guilt and reluctance. It was his night to cook, a simple routine we'd both agreed upon ages ago, and one he rarely missed. Before I could ask what was going on, my mother-in-law's voice sliced through the air, heavy with condescension. He didn't cook. You need to do your duty as a wife and prepare the meal for your family. I froze. My ears burned with the sting of her words, each syllable striking like an accusation. She said it so matter-of-factly, as if she were commenting on the weather. My husband didn't say a word, didn't even flinch. He sat there, an accomplice to her judgment, his silence deafening. My mind raced. Duty? My duty? After the day I'd had, juggling deadlines, dealing with chaos, rushing to make it home for family dinner, and now this? I inhaled deeply, forcing the words down before they erupted. I turned on my heel, grabbed my phone, and ordered takeout. The kitchen became a flurry of activity as I set out plates for myself and the kids. I didn't look at my in-laws or my husband, not even once. My focus was on the kids, making sure they ate while ignoring the simmering tension around me. As we sat down to eat, the table felt like a battleground. My mother-in-law kept talking, her words a running commentary on my failures as a wife and mother. In our day, she began, the phrase dripping with superiority, women knew their place. They took pride in taking care of their homes and families. She went on, each word designed to chip away at me, but I held my ground, letting her voice wash over me like static. Finally, I looked at my husband. Do you have anything to say about this? My voice was calm, but the weight of my question hung heavy in the air. He hesitated, his eyes darting to his mother before finally meeting mine. Well, she has a point, he said, his voice unsure but compliant, like a boy caught between his mother's scolding and his own guilt. It wouldn't hurt if you acted more like a proper woman, you know? Took better care of the house and the kids. Tradition is tradition for a reason. The words hit me like a slap. Tradition? Proper woman? I stared at him, the man I had built a life with, someone I thought was my equal, my partner. For years, we had navigated life together, finding balance in the chaos, sharing the load, supporting each other. And now, here he was undoing all of that in a single sentence. My chest tightened, the anger bubbling just below the surface. I let the silence linger for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, with measured precision, I spoke. Tradition, I began, my voice steady, doesn't allow a man making $35K to support a family of 5. You're too broke to be this sexist. The words landed like a hammer. His face crumpled, his bravado shattered in an instant. Tears welled in his eyes, and he muttered something before excusing himself from the table. The room fell silent, except for the sound of forks clinking against plates and my mother-in-law's sharp inhale of disbelief. I regretted saying it in front of the kids, but at that moment, my anger drowned out everything else. After dinner, I tucked the kids into bed, their innocent questions about the night piercing my already raw nerves. Back in the quiet of our room, I replayed the evening's events, the weight of what I'd said settling in my chest. I knew I had struck a nerve, not just with my husband, but with myself. The truth of my words lingered, cutting deeper than I had anticipated. He had betrayed me, yes, but more than that, he had betrayed the life we had built together. Later that night, when he finally returned to the bedroom, his face still red from earlier, I could see the shame and hurt written all over him. But I didn't speak. I waited, giving him the space to say what needed to be said. Whether or not he could find the courage to face the truth of our reality, that was entirely up to him. And for the first time in years, I wasn't sure what his answer would be. When I told Mia I'd pick up the snacks for movie night, I didn't think it would turn into a full-blown argument. We've had our share of petty disagreements before. Whose turn it was to do the dishes, who forgot to lock the door, but this one started with a single bag of popcorn. Specifically, the wrong bag of popcorn. I showed up at her place, arms loaded with chips, candy, and a 6-pack of soda. I grabbed everything I thought we'd need for our weekly tradition of bad movies and worse commentary. When I pulled out the popcorn, a microwavable bag of buttery goodness, Mia just stared at it like I'd brought a bag of nails. "What is that?" she asked, her tone sharp enough to cut through the plastic. "Popcorn," I replied, confused. "Like we always have." "No," she said, crossing her arms. "We always get kettle corn." Now, here's the thing. We don't always get kettle corn. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't. It's not like we have some kind of official popcorn constitution. I reminded her of this, maybe with a little more sarcasm than was necessary. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss the formal treaty on corn preferences?" Her eyes narrowed. "It's not that hard to remember, Alex. I literally always get kettle corn when it's my turn." That wasn't true, and I said so. She brought buttered popcorn 2 weeks ago, but she wasn't having it. "No, I didn't," she snapped. "You're thinking of the time you brought it because you were craving salt or whatever." "Oh, come on. It's popcorn, Mia. Just eat it or don't." She huffed and muttered something under her breath. I couldn't make it out, but it sounded suspiciously like so typical. My patience, already on thin ice, cracked. "What's that supposed to mean?" She looked me dead in the eye and said, "It means you never actually listen to me, Alex. You just do whatever's easiest for you and expect me to go along with it." Now, that hit a nerve. I do a lot for Mia, more than she seems to notice, apparently. I'm the one who fixed her Wi-Fi when it went out, who picked her up from the airport at midnight last month, who helped her move when her last roommate bailed. So yeah, I fired back. "Oh, give me a break. I'm not your personal assistant. It's one bag of popcorn, not some grand betrayal." Her face flushed red. "It's not about the popcorn. It's about you not caring enough to get the one thing I actually like. Maybe if you were this specific when you asked for it, we wouldn't have this problem." I shot back. She let out a bitter laugh. "You're unbelievable. Do you know how exhausting it is to deal with someone who's always technically right but completely inconsiderate?" "Well, sorry for not reading your mind, Your Highness," I said, and yeah, that might have been a low blow. Her face hardened like stone. "Forget it," she said. "Let's just watch the movie." But it wasn't forget it. The tension was thick enough to choke on. She sat on the couch, arms crossed, while I tried to salvage the vibe with some self-deprecating joke about how this was the worst fight since the great pizza topping debate of 2021. She didn't even crack a smile. By the time the opening credits rolled, I was fuming silently. Halfway through the movie, I got up to microwave the popcorn because, damn it, we were eating it whether she liked it or not. When I brought the bowl back, she didn't even look at it. "I'm not hungry," she said flatly. That was it. I exploded. "Are you serious right now? You made such a big deal about the popcorn, and now you're just going to sit there and pout." I'm not pouting, she said, glaring at me. I just don't feel like eating something I didn't want in the first place. Oh, grow up, Mia. It's popcorn, not poison. And you're the one acting like a child over this, she shot back. Do you hear yourself? You're making a scene over snacks. At least I'm trying, I yelled. You just sit there on your high horse like everything I do is some massive failure. Because you don't think, Alex, she yelled back. You never think about anyone but yourself. It stung. I mean, it really stung. And instead of responding like a mature adult, I said the absolute worst thing I could think of. Maybe you should just get your own snacks from now on. Oh, wait. You'd need someone to drive you there. Her mouth fell open, and I immediately regretted it. Mia doesn't drive because of an anxiety disorder, something I've always supported her with until now. She didn't say a word, just stood up, grabbed her keys, and walked out. I sat there, staring at the untouched popcorn, feeling like the world's biggest jerk. She came back 20 minutes later with a bag of kettle corn and a look on her face that could freeze hell over. Here, she said, tossing it onto the table. Enjoy your perfect movie night. I couldn't help myself. I didn't ask you to go get it. And I didn't ask you to be such an asshole, she shot back. We finished the movie in icy silence. When it was over, she stood up, grabbed her stuff, and left without a word. I haven't heard from her since, and I keep replaying the whole thing in my head, wondering where it went so completely off the rails. I mean, yeah, I was kind of a jerk, but she wasn't exactly innocent either. So, AITA? It had been months, but the weight of it still crushed me in waves. Sometimes, I'd catch myself looking for him in the small things. The swing of a door, the lilt of someone's laugh, or the sight of a well-worn hoodie slung over a chair. Then I'd remember, like a punch to the gut, that he was gone. Forever. My son. My brilliant, frustrating, wonderful kid who always managed to outsmart me. My rock star, my pride. Struck down by some idiot too selfish to call a cab. It wasn't just the loss. It was the silence after. The absence of his voice, his laughter echoing in the house, his exasperated dad. You're so lame when I made a dad joke, or the way he rolled his eyes but still smiled. McGill had been his dream. We toasted to it, beer in hand, me joking about mourning my European beer adventure fund. That memory burned in my mind, not just because it was a high point, but because it was the last time I'd seen him happy, really, truly happy. The rest was always meant for him. I told him so, repeatedly. If he didn't want to go to college, he had options. He laughed every time I said, if not, it's monks and beer for me. That became our thing. He'd nudge me at the dinner table or send me memes teasing about it. So when my ex-wife brought up giving the fund to her stepson after my son's death, it hit like a slap in the face. Not because her request was inherently bad. She'd remarried, had her own blended family, but because it felt like she didn't understand what that money meant. It was more than money. It was a dream shared between me and my son. Her stepson was fine, by all accounts. A decent kid, sure, but I didn't raise him. He wasn't part of the life my son and I had built. My ex's husband made it clear he wasn't responsible for my son's expenses growing up. That was fine. I respected that boundary. But now she expected me to cross it? To pour my son's legacy into another kid's future? The nerve of it floored me. I told her no, and I told her why. I'm taking that trip, I said. The one he always teased me about. To drink Belgian beer brewed by monks and toast him with every sip. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. You're wasting it, she snapped. It's irresponsible. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was wasting thousands of dollars. But to me, it wasn't waste. It was closure. It was keeping a promise, honoring a joke we'd shared, and carrying a piece of him to the other side of the world. I wasn't prepared for the backlash. Friends and family whispered behind my back. Even my wife, my steadfast anchor through all this, gently questioned my decision. Are you sure? She'd asked one night, her hand on mine. It's a lot of money. I could see the doubt in her eyes, but she didn't push. She trusted me, and that trust kept me going. Booking the trip felt surreal. I'd spent years dreaming of it in jest, but now it was happening. It felt hollow at first. What was the point without him? But I pressed forward. A week before I left, I visited his grave. Well, kid, I said, sitting cross-legged on the grass. Looks like I'm going after all. Wish you were coming with me." I chuckled bitterly, imagining his smirk. "Bet you'd say something like, 'Don't embarrass me, old man.'" When I landed in Brussels, the air felt heavy with memories I couldn't quite place. The trip unfolded like a bittersweet symphony. The beer? Incredible. The monks? Quieter than I expected. And every sip, every clink of a glass was for him. In Bruges, I found myself at a canal, watching the sun set over the water. I raised my glass and whispered, "This one's for you, buddy." A warmth spread through me, not just from the beer, but from the sense that somehow he was there, laughing along with me. By the end of the trip, I'd visited every brewery on my list. But it wasn't just about the beer. I wandered cobblestone streets, stood in awe of ancient cathedrals, and ate my weight in chocolate and waffles. I lived. For the first time in months, I felt alive. And I knew, deep down, that's what he'd have wanted. Not wallowing, not mourning endlessly, but living. When I got home, the whispers had died down. My ex didn't bring up the money again, and I didn't offer any details about my trip. It wasn't for them. It was for me. For us. Months later, I started a small scholarship fund in his name. It wasn't much, but enough to help a student like him, brilliant, driven, full of potential, chase their dreams. That felt right. A balance between honoring him and moving forward. Do I regret it? Not for a second. My son was the best part of my life, and that trip was a testament to the bond we shared. It wasn't about the beer, the money, or even the trip itself. It was about love, about keeping his memory alive in the only way I knew how. It was supposed to be a simple, restful weekend. I could still see the way my wife smiled, clutching her stack of books, sighing about how she couldn't wait to do nothing. That smile kept me in check every time I thought about how boring I'd find the trip. But hey, I had my fishing rod and the promise of quiet mornings on the lake with my dad. It was a trade-off I was happy to make, for her sake. Then came my mom. She wasn't part of the plan. My dad, yes, he was my fishing buddy. My mom, she was supposed to stay home. But there she was, climbing out of the car, lugging bags like we'd invited her on some all-inclusive family retreat. I froze when I saw her. My wife had gone inside already, probably setting up her little reading nook. She had no idea what was coming. "Hi, sweetheart," my mom chirped. "I thought I'd surprise you too." Surprise was right. My brain scrambled for some way to handle this, but all I managed was a weak smile before helping with the bags. My dad shrugged like this wasn't a big deal, like this was normal. Maybe it was. Maybe I'd let it become normal. The first hour wasn't terrible. My wife stayed buried in her book while Mom unpacked groceries. I kept telling myself, it's fine, she won't make a fuss. Then came the suggestions. Why don't we all have dinner together later? Mom said, unpacking a bottle of wine. We can grill or make something cozy. Oh, honey, do you have any herbs for seasoning? That honey was aimed at my wife, who didn't even look up from her book. I'm relaxing, she replied simply. Well, of course, but we all have to eat, don't we? Mom laughed nervously, glancing at me like I was supposed to step in. I didn't. I grabbed my fishing gear, eager to escape before things escalated. My dad and I were out on the water all day. I should have felt relaxed, but there was a knot in my stomach. I knew that leaving my wife alone with my mom was a mistake. But I rationalized it. Mom's an adult. She'll handle herself. Wife's an adult. She'll hold her boundaries. They'll be fine. They weren't. When we got back, the cabin was tense. My wife had retreated to the bedroom with a plate of food, door closed like a line drawn in sand. My mom was fuming in the kitchen, loudly clattering dishes as if she wanted someone to ask what was wrong. Dad tried to keep quiet, but the weight of the situation pressed down on all of us. I didn't have to ask. Mom started in the moment I stepped into the room. I don't understand, she huffed, gesturing at the kitchen. I went out of my way to make dinner for everyone. I wanted us to have a nice evening together. And she just disappears? She's relaxing, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. So, am I not allowed to relax too? Mom shot back. I could have stayed home, but I thought I'd be helpful. I sighed. Mom, this wasn't your trip. You weren't even invited. Her face fell, like I'd slapped her. Excuse me? I was tired. I didn't want this fight, but it was happening anyway. You came uninvited, knowing this was supposed to be a quiet weekend for her. She doesn't owe you anything, least of all her time and energy. Well, if I'd known I wasn't wanted, I wouldn't have come. Mom snapped, tears welling in her eyes. But I thought family was always welcome. Take the hint next time, I said, my voice low. If you're not invited, don't come. Dinner ended in silence. My dad looked like he wanted to disappear into his fishing hat. My mom barely touched her food. Afterward, they packed up and left, slamming the car doors as they drove off. I thought I'd feel relief, but guilt lingered like smoke after a fire. Inside the bedroom, my wife looked up from her book, her eyes soft but wary. They're gone. Yeah, I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. I'm sorry. She didn't say anything, just reached for my hand. I knew she forgave me, but that didn't erase the fact that I'd failed her. I let my mom's drama invade her peace, and no amount of fishing could reel back the time she'd lost. Next time, I told myself, I'd do better. When Lucas suggested we take a trip together, it sounded perfect. I mean, we've been dating for 2 years, and this felt like the next step. A romantic getaway, just the two of us. No work emails, no catching up on my shows, no distractions. Just us. So, I said yes. And honestly, I thought that meant we'd plan it together. Silly me. A week later, Lucas sent me the itinerary. Not a rough outline. Mind you, a full-on, military-grade schedule. Flights, accommodations, dinner reservations, and activities. He'd even blocked out time for exploring local culture and unstructured relaxation. It wasn't a trip, it was a PowerPoint presentation with hyperlinks. I stared at the email for a good 5 minutes, my stomach sinking. Was this even for me? I couldn't find a single thing I'd have chosen myself. Let me back up. I love Lucas. He's thoughtful, stable, and dependable. But he has this thing. He believes he knows best. About everything. He'll say, "You'll thank me later," or "Trust me, you'll love this," with the confidence of a man who's never been wrong in his life. Except, of course, he has. Like that time he bought me a wool sweater for my birthday, even though I'm allergic. Or the time he planned a surprise picnic, forgetting I hate eating outside because I attract bugs like a sugar donut at a WASP convention. But I digress. This trip was no different. He'd booked us a wine tour. I don't drink wine. He knows that. A hiking excursion. I loathe hiking. And dinner at some snooty molecular gastronomy place where the portions are microscopic and served with tweezers. Oh, and the accommodations? A rustic cabin in the middle of nowhere. I'm a hotel with room service kind of girl. I thought Lucas knew this about me. Or maybe he thought I'd grow into liking what he likes if he just pushed hard enough. I texted him, "Hey, saw the itinerary. Can we chat about it?" He replied instantly. "What's there to chat about? It's all set." That all set felt like a slap in the face. I called him. "Lucas, I appreciate the effort, but you planned this without me. None of this feels like me. Could we maybe adjust a few things?" He sighed. Not a soft sigh. A loud, theatrical, "you're being difficult" sigh. Adjust what? I picked everything for a reason. You'll love it if you just try. I don't want to try. I want to enjoy the trip. Together. Maybe stay at a hotel instead of the cabin? And skip the hike. "You're being ridiculous," he said, his tone sharper. "It's a cabin, not a cave. And the hike is easy. You'll be fine." That's when I snapped. "You didn't plan this trip for me, Lucas. You planned it for you." He laughed like I was being unreasonable. "That's not true. I planned it for us. You'll see. You're overthinking." The call ended there, but I wasn't done. If you wanted to ignore my input, fine. Two can play this game. I pulled up the reservation confirmation email. Yes, he'd had it sent to both of us, and canceled the cabin. Instead, I booked us a suite at a luxury resort in the same area. I emailed the wine tour company and swapped it for a spa day. As for the hiking excursion, gone. I replaced it with a private cooking class. I didn't tell Lucas. I wanted to, but something inside me, a petty, defiant little gremlin, wanted to let him find out when we got there. I justified it by telling myself I was fixing the trip, making it something we'd both enjoy. Sure, it wasn't the most mature move, but at least I wasn't dragging him up a mountain against his will. The storm hit the day before the trip. Lucas called to double-check the packing list he'd sent me. Yes, there was a packing list. I told him not to worry about it. The weather looks great. Perfect for the pool, I said casually. The pool? He sounded confused. You mean the lake? Pool, I repeated. At the resort. There was a long pause. What resort? My heart raced, but I kept my voice calm. I switched the cabin to a resort. You'll love it. Trust me. You what? His voice climbed an octave. Why would you do that without asking me? Oh, you mean like how you planned the whole trip without asking me? That's not the same thing, he snapped. I planned it for both of us. No, Lucas, I shot back. You planned it for you. You didn't even consider what I'd like. You're unbelievable, he said. Do you even care how much work I put into this? Do you care how much I hate hiking in cabins? We went back and forth, the argument escalating until he finally said, Forget it. If you don't like the trip I planned, maybe we shouldn't go. Fine by me, I said, hanging up before he could. My hands were shaking, but I felt weirdly vindicated. If he was going to cancel, that was on him. I wasn't going to spend a week pretending to enjoy myself, just to keep the peace. An hour later, I got a text. Trip's off. Hope you're happy. Was I? Not really, but I wasn't exactly sorry either. Maybe I was wrong to change the plans without telling him. But wasn't he just as wrong to ignore me in the first place? I keep replaying the whole thing in my head, trying to figure out if I overreacted or if this was doomed from the start. AITA? My wife, Karen, was always the epitome of grace under fire. A corporate lawyer and mediator, she carried herself with a calm authority that could silence a room. Her wardrobe matched her. A collection of tailored suits, sleek blouses, and understated but elegant dresses, each piece in armor she wore in a battles for justice. She had this knack for making people feel heard, which made her diagnosis of ovarian cancer all the more jarring. Here was someone who had spent her life fighting for others, now having to fight a battle that didn't play by any rules. The last 2 years of her life were a slow descent into hell. It's hard to explain the unique cruelty of watching the person you love most slip away while you remain powerless. The last 6 months were the worst. Constant pain, a revolving door of hospital rooms, and an endless parade of doctors whose optimism felt more like cruelty. But even in the middle of that, Karen thought of others. She made a point to decide where her belongings would go, especially her work clothes. She wanted them donated to a women's shelter she loved, where women rebuilding their lives could use them for court appearances, job interviews, or just to feel dignified. It was her last bit of control, and I promised her I'd honor it. Then came Sarah, my sister, the embodiment of every selfish stereotype you could imagine. At Karen's wake, a goddamn wake, Sarah sidled up to me, her eyes scanning the room, not in grief, but like a vulture circling a carcass. So, she began, all faux sympathy and syrupy tone. What are you going to do with Karen's clothes? You still here? Disbelieving. Karen hadn't been in the ground for 24 hours, and here was Sarah, already calculating what she could get. Not now, Sarah, I said. My voice was sharp, but my restraint surprised even me. She shrugged and muttered something about wanting to remember Karen by a few pieces, as if they were souvenirs from a vacation and not the legacy of my wife's life and work. Months passed. I kept my distance from Sarah, which wasn't hard because she hadn't done a damn thing to help during Karen's illness. She never visited, never called to ask if we needed anything, and certainly never offered emotional support. Karen had seen through her long before I did. Your sister, she once said, with a rare note of disdain, lives in a world where everything revolves around her. Then came my mom's birthday. I wasn't exactly in a social mood, but family obligations have a way of dragging you out of your solitude. I showed up, gift in hand, and tried to keep my focus on surviving the evening. But Sarah, as always, made it about her. She approached me, all smiles and false cheer. So, about Karen's clothes? I didn't let her finish. No, I said flatly. Her smile faltered. Karen wanted them donated to a women's shelter. That's what I'm doing. Sarah's face twisted into something ugly. Even in death, she's selfish, she spat. It took me a moment to process what she had said. What the fuck does that mean? I asked, my voice rising despite myself. She always thought she was better than everyone, Sarah continued, her words dripping with bitterness. And now she's giving away her clothes to strangers instead of family? It's not fair. I laughed. A harsh, humorless sound. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair is burying your wife after watching her suffer for 2 years. Fair is honoring her wishes because she spent her whole life thinking about others. And fair, Sarah, is me lighting those clothes on fire before I'd ever let you touch them. She started crying then, loud, theatrical sobs that drew the attention of the room. My mom came over, concern etched on her face. What's going on? She asked, her eyes darting between us. Ask Sarah, I said. She's the one turning this into a spectacle. But my mom, ever the peacemaker, turned to me. You didn't have to be so harsh. Sarah's taking Karen's death hard too. I couldn't believe it. Taking it hard? I echoed. She didn't care about Karen when she was alive, and now she's using her death as an excuse to be a selfish asshole. I'm not doing this, Mom. I grabbed my gift and walked out, leaving their shocked faces behind. On the drive home, anger and sadness wrestled inside me. How had it come to this? My family, the people who were supposed to support me, had turned Karen's death into a battleground for their entitlement. It wasn't just about the clothes. It was about respect for Karen, for her wishes for me. And they had none. The next day, I called the shelter and arranged the donation. It felt like closing a door, not just on Karen's things, but on the toxicity of my family. If they couldn't honor her memory, then they didn't deserve to be part of my life. It was as simple as that. It started with a simple conversation over dinner. I had just finished telling Emily about this travel blog I'd stumbled on, featuring a list of breathtaking hiking trails around the world. The photos were incredible. Narrow paths winding through dense forests, mountains rolling like waves in the distance, waterfalls cascading into crystal-clear pools. My voice must have been full of excitement because Emily smiled at me, her fork paused midair. I thought for a moment she was as caught up in the idea as I was. But then she said, or we could just go somewhere with a beach. Something relaxing. That's how it began. 2 very different visions of our dream vacation. To me, the thought of lying around all day, sipping cocktails was, well, stifling. I wanted movement, action, the kind of adventure that left you bone-tired at night, but grinning from ear to ear. I wanted to feel like I had done something, explored, pushed myself a little. Emily, on the other hand, craved the exact opposite. Life is already so busy, she explained. Why would we use our precious vacation to exhaust ourselves even more? She had a point. She works long hours and constantly juggles responsibilities, from her demanding job to family obligations. A trip to the Maldives or a quiet coastal resort, where she could bury herself in a good book and let the sun work its magic, seemed like the perfect antidote to her usual grind. And I tried to understand that. I really did. But the thought of staying in one place, day after day, made me feel trapped before we'd even booked the tickets. We both wanted this trip to be special. It wasn't just another vacation, it was our time. We'd both been stretched thin lately, and this was supposed to be a chance to reconnect, to make memories together. But every time we sat down to discuss the details, we seemed to end up further apart. At first, we tried finding some middle ground. I suggested a trip to Costa Rica. They've got beaches, I said, pulling up pictures of white sand and turquoise water on my phone. But we could also go zip-lining through the jungle or hike to some of those volcanic hot springs. Emily's brow furrowed. That looks intense, she said hesitantly. I was thinking more along the lines of lounging by the pool, not sweating buckets on a mountain trail. So, she countered with a proposal of her own, a week in an all-inclusive resort in Turks and Caicos. The place looked incredible, with infinity pools, private cabanas, and a seemingly endless ocean. But as she described how we'd spend the days, sleeping in, leisurely breakfasts, afternoons napping under umbrellas, I felt an unexpected pang of dread. I imagined myself getting antsy by the second day, glancing longingly at the horizon, itching to explore whatever was beyond the neatly manicured resort grounds. We both tried to compromise in other ways. Emily suggested I could take a day or 2 to go on excursions while she relaxed. That way, you can have your adventure without dragging me along. But the idea didn't sit right with me. I didn't want us to spend the trip apart, doing separate things in the same location. I wanted to share the experiences with her, to laugh together at our missteps or marvel at the sights we'd discover. And deep down, I think she felt the same. She just wanted to share a different kind of experience. The turning point came during an unplanned, late-night argument. We'd been poring over travel guides and Pinterest boards for hours, trying to merge our wish lists into one cohesive plan. Frustration bubbled over, and Emily snapped. "Why can't you just relax for once? Why does everything have to be a challenge or an adventure with you?" Her words stung because, in a way, they were true. I struggled with the idea of slowing down, with letting myself just be. And why is sitting still your idea of fun? I shot back. "We could lie around at home for free, if that's all you want." She looked hurt, and I immediately regretted saying it. There was a long silence, the kind that feels heavier than any shouting match. Finally, she said softly, "It's not just about relaxing. I feel like I never get a chance to breathe anymore, to really rest. I need that to feel human again." She looked down at her hands. And honestly, I thought you'd understand that. Hearing her say it like that made something shift in me. I'd been so focused on what I wanted that I hadn't fully grasped how deeply she needed this escape. It wasn't laziness or lack of imagination. It was self-preservation. But then I couldn't help but wonder, didn't I deserve to have my needs met too? The truth was, my craving for an active trip wasn't just about adventure. It was about feeling alive, reconnecting with a part of myself I'd started to lose in the grind of daily life. Hiking up a mountain, taking in the view, feeling the strain in my muscles, it reminded me of what I was capable of. It was like hitting the reset button on my soul. How could I give that up? Neither of us wanted to back down, but neither of us wanted to let the other down either. That was the hardest part. This trip was supposed to bring us closer, not drive a wedge between us. But every potential itinerary felt like a compromise that left one of us unfulfilled. Now, the flights are still unbooked, the plans still undecided. We've talked in circles, each of us trying to convince the other, or maybe ourselves, that their choice could work for both of us. But deep down, I think we both know the truth. No matter where we go, one of us will have to sacrifice more than the other. And I don't know if that's fair. So here I am wondering, AITA?